Toronto are heading in the wrong direction.
Heading into November, things can get much worse.
The city's top doctor issues a stark warning and a call for action. Plus, the frantic search for a missing boater continues. Eric Quimby's boat was found this afternoon, but the sailor is still unaccounted for. And
some residents have caught, within the last 3 years, over 100 rats.
Mississauga has a rat problem, and it's gotten so bad the city may start covering the cost of exterminators. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Well, there were 583 new COVID-19 infections reported in Ontario today. Toronto continues to see the most cases with 187 new infections. And tonight, the city's medical officer of health has a stark warning. Dr. Eileen de Villa says the numbers could soon get much worse. New modeling shows possible scenarios the city could face if more interventions aren't put in place. Talia Ricci breaks it all down for us.
The message today from Toronto's top doctor: the earlier intervention happens, the better the outcome. New modeling shows what the future could look like. A reproductive number below 1 means the outbreak would slowly die out, but right now it's growing.
With our level of transmission, or an R of 1.2, we expect to see disease activity in the next few weeks of October that would exceed our April peak.
Then it could get much worse in November and peak between March and May 2021. But Dr. de Villa says this is what could happen if there are more interventions.
If we add measures to control COVID-19 spread at the end of October, by the end of May 2021, the total number of people infected would be 6 times lower compared to a scenario of taking no action.
What that action entails wasn't specified today, but indoor spaces where a mask might not always be worn is what officials say is risky.
Yes, let's keep the economy open. Let's keep people at work. Let's keep kids at school. And the way to do that is to close restaurants and bars. The evidence is very clear.
Restaurants and bars are feeling the target.
It worries me to shut down because, A, we've just retrained and rehired hundreds of staff. And now to feel that we might lose people again. And financially, it's been a tough go. Everybody will tell you in this industry.
Ontario's premier has repeatedly voiced his reluctance to temporarily stop indoor dining, saying he believes most restaurants are following the guidelines. But that hasn't eased Kabuth's worries.
For health reasons, we have to be careful, but being constantly every morning having to wake up and watch the news and watch so I know whether or not we're open next week, it puts a lot of stress on us.
The city also repeated its message today, reminding people to not hold big Thanksgiving dinners this weekend. They say to keep the people who are at your dinner table to those who live in the same house as you. And if you live alone or you're single, still they say the safest way to enjoy Thanksgiving will be virtually. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
The Premier also had more to say about Thanksgiving today, clearing up some of the confusion over guidelines for safely celebrating the holiday.
This Thanksgiving, we're asking that you spend the holiday with just your household. That means sitting down to dinner with only the people you live with. And yesterday I spoke with my wife Carla, and that's exactly what we'll be doing.
Yesterday, Doug Ford didn't confirm whether family members who don't live with him would take part in his household's Thanksgiving dinner. Well, today, the Premier clarified his daughters won't be there. He says while this will be difficult, it's necessary in helping to stop the spread of COVID-19. Now, also today, the province announced new funding for mental health services.
$176 million we're announcing today will fill urgent gaps in care across Ontario. It will see the creation of new supports and the expansion of programs in several priority areas.
The announcement took place at CAMH as part of Mental Illness Awareness Week. The center is marking the opening of the third phase of its redevelopment. The new funding includes nearly $1 million for additional inpatient beds at CAMH. $4 million will go towards nurse practitioners for detox services in Ontario, and $8 million will be used to increase access to addiction treatments. Well, the province's teachers' unions are not backing down in its fight against the Ontario government's back-to-school plan, and they're bringing in the experts. The Ontario Labour Relations Board had dismissed the union's opposition to the plan, so today the unions called on some experts to give their thoughts. As Lorenda Redekop explains, this comes as students in the largest school board in the country may soon see larger class sizes.
These kids may not realize there are dueling visions about how they should stay safe while learning this year. In a press conference today, the teachers' unions brought with them experts in a variety of fields, like engineering.
When we heat our buildings, they become relatively drier inside. When air is drier, we all become more susceptible to respiratory disease.
While he says air filtration is key, others the unions brought forward called for masks all day for everyone. And an infectious diseases expert says while the majority of cases are in the 3 hot zones now, that may not last.
Communicable diseases don't stay sealed in those population centers. They will percolate across the province. It is going to happen.
That is an investment.
The education minister called this a political disagreement with the unions, adding the government is investing money.
$50 million set aside for the flu season, specifically for the second wave, demonstrates that we are looking ahead to give our boards the investments they need to prevent the spread within our schools.
Their version of working with them is that we just agree with everything they're bringing forward, which just is unconscionable because we know that it's not working.
All this as at the Toronto District School Board, they're trying to solve a numbers problem. Students choosing online learning has now increased to 80,000. So they're shuffling around teachers. 570 teachers will move from in-school to virtual. 324 schools will lose at least 1 teacher. Some will be down 4 teachers.
They may see larger class sizes. Right now we have, for example, a class that should be able to have about 24 students in it with 8 to 10 in some cases. We just don't have the funding or the staffing available to maintain that.
Parents are frustrated.
He's sort of figured out his place in his classroom, and for that to be completely upended just because the school suddenly has either 2 kids less or 2 kids more, it seems a little bit like overkill.
I don't feel like they're going to be safe if we now have to mix cohorts and change up their class again. I think they've gone through enough.
Meanwhile, if teachers don't feel safe, the lawyer for the unions says they can always refuse work. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, restaurants in the province that have been selling alcohol for takeout and delivery may be able to keep doing so even when the pandemic is over. The change was supposed to be temporary, a quick fix to boost sales and keep restaurants afloat during the difficult spring shutdown, with regulations set to expire at the end of the year. But the government is now committed to extending it. It's part of a new relief package for small businesses that also promises grants of up to $1,000 for businesses that have fewer than 10 employees in order to help offset the cost of PPE. Well, a joint search and rescue continues tonight for a 65-year-old Oakville man who's been missing on Lake Ontario since yesterday. Police say Eric Quimby left the Oakville Club Marina on his sailboat and has not been heard from since. Our Greg Ross spent the day in Oakville and has the latest.
65-year-old Eric Quimby was a member here at the Oakville Club. We're told that he left here early in the morning yesterday, and we learned late this afternoon that a boat was discovered by the U.S. Coast Guard off the shores of Rochester, New York, and we have confirmed that that boat does belong to Quimby. He was not on board that boat when it was discovered approximately 3 kilometers from Rochester, found by a concerned citizen who was out on the water, and they said the boat looked suspicious. They called the U.S. Coast Guard, who has since towed that into Rochester, where it remains tonight. And so this massive joint search and rescue continues, and we're told that it involves 2 Hercules aircraft, one from the U.S., one from Canada, a Griffin helicopter. Both the Canadian Canadian and U.S. Coast Guards are involved in this search, and both the Halton and Toronto Marine units are helping out as well. There are also multiple volunteer Coast Guards helping in this search, and the Joint Rescue Coordination Center out of Trenton has taken the lead on this. They told us that they are facing a number of challenges on this search because of the weather conditions on the water.
The weather right now is very challenging for our search crews. We have high winds as well as a very poor sea state, up to 12 feet sometimes today, which are indeed challenging for our surface and our air crews as well. However, they are very professional. They train in these kinds of challenging conditions to be able to go out there and perform.
We're also learning a lot about Eric Quimby tonight. We're told that he is a very skilled sailor with more than 30 years experience. He left the marina here alone yesterday in a 30-foot sailboat. We're told that he was headed out on a recreational trip to the Stony Creek area. He was reported missing in the late afternoon. Now, we talked to a number of the members here at the Oakville Club where he has been a long-time member. They told us that he likes to get out as often as he possibly can. In fact, he's one of the most active members here at the club, and quite often he goes out on the water alone. So as you can imagine, this has been a difficult day for the members here at the club as they await information on this search, and of course everyone here hoping this is a successful search and rescue. Greg Ross, CBC News, Oakville.
More police interrogation video today at the trial of Adam Strong, who is accused of murdering 2 Oshawa teens. In it, Strong neither confirms nor denies harming, killing, or dismembering anyone between the disappearance of Candace Fitzpatrick in 2008 and Rory Hache, who went missing almost 10 years later. Detective Paul Mitten went through names and photos of some missing women, and while Strong said some were familiar, he knew nothing about them. The defense also cross-examined the now retired detective about his methods in that 11-hour interview. The trial continues tomorrow. Well, 4 teenagers were rushed to hospital after a high-speed crash that left the driver with a severed foot and a Porsche split in half. It happened at about 3 a.m. near College Street and Lansdowne Ave. 3 boys and 1 girl, all between 13 and 14 years old, were in the car. 2 of them suffered serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The 2 others had minor injuries. A resident nearby heard the crash, and it just so happens he's a fire and circus performer trained in first aid and familiar with fire extinguishers.
So I come running out and I tried both the front doors and neither of them were working. The only one that was slightly budging was the back door. So I pried it open and got the kids out, except for the kid that was the driver. And so he was laying kind of in the car, kind of laying down. I helped him out, put him on face down, and I wrapped up his foot and I told him just lay there, because I didn't want to flip him over and risk moving him too much. So I just tried to keep him in a steady position as possible. And once his bleeding and he was conscious and speaking to me, I moved on to the fire. So I ran inside to grab my fire extinguisher and I put out with another guy the front end of the car, which was still on fire over by the corner there.
Police say they believe the driver was speeding before losing control on a turn. The car then slammed into a hydro pole. No charges have been laid at this time. Still ahead tonight, this pooch caught the travel bug running away on the runway at Pearson Airport. We'll bring you the story of her great escape, plus
we do have some scattered showers coming back into the forecast for Thursday. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. We'll talk about that, but also the forecast for the holiday weekend, all coming up after the break.
To Mississauga now, where some parts of the city are dealing with a major rat problem. In fact, it's gotten so bad, local council is considering a motion to compensate residents for the money they've had to spend to get rid of the rodents. Farah Morali has more.
I'm going to try to lift this patio stone.
Val Skinner knows rats. Rodents have been digging holes in her Mississauga backyard for the last 5 years.
They come all the way up here. See this hole and this little tunnel? And here they've made themselves 2 paths, and they can come out over here. Here's where they can come out. And I'll lift this rock to show you right under there.
Skinner has tried in vain to keep the pests out, but nothing's really worked. These videos were taken by people in Mississauga who say, while they've always seen some rats, they've never experienced anything like this year.
A resident had caught 6 rats in one day. This past summer, we've alone and with my attached neighbor have caught over 27. So it's a problem.
I feel like Bill Murray from Caddyshack. I've been, out there every night setting traps, baiting.
I'm a senior, and I'm on my own, and it is not easy to fill the holes, let alone catch them or bait them.
Peel Region staff say the problem may be linked to construction in the Applewood neighborhood, but it's picked up in recent years. The digging drives the rats from their hiding spots.
It is very urgent. I'm requesting that those that need the support get that support now.
The city councillor has an idea to help. She wants the city to compensate residents for the cost of trying to get rid of the rodents.
The best way to go about it is to provide, financial support through a rebate program.
In Toronto, pest control experts have seen an increase in the number of rat calls during the pandemic. With restaurants closed, they say the rats have been spreading out to the suburbs. The city says it has no plans to compensate homeowners to get rid of them. Back in Mississauga, Val Skinner says she's not waiting for any rebates.
If we move these feeders and get a new patio put in, that might solve the problem too.
She says the rats don't bother her much. Hopes a few changes will keep them away. Farah Morali, CBC News, Mississauga.
This is a look at a tree that was snapped in half in the East End tonight near Milverton and Greenwood, possibly due to the very blustery conditions we saw today. Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a look at the forecast. And Colette, those winds were the story of the day. They calmed down a bit as we got into the evening, but earlier there were some pretty heavy gusts.
Thanks, Kelda. Boy, what a blustery day today. Nice to see those winds beginning to ease up. But some of the wind gusts, basically for Toronto between Pearson and what we saw for the island, between 70 and 75 kilometers an hour, some of the strongest wind gusts. For Windsor, we had some between 60 and 65 kilometers an hour. But Port Colborne, a wind gust just over 85 kilometers an hour. So some significant gusts today. And it's nice to see those easing up. We'll have some dry conditions towards tomorrow morning, not everywhere, but in many cases, at least for the city. But then what happens towards tomorrow afternoon, showers filling back in. The holiday weekend, boy, oh boy, is it going to start out warm, especially Friday into Saturday. That's a really warm day. But as we go towards Monday, showers are going to return. I'll walk you through all of that as we get towards the 5-day forecast coming up. Daytime temperatures today, boy, look at some of those readings back towards Chatham, Kent, and Windsor. With the winds, though, it's sort of hard to feel the temperatures, right? And Toronto, unofficially today, the high up to 18 degrees. But this is what's ahead. Still some lake effect showers through the overnight hours. Like I said, a few spots staying kind of wet even through the overnight. Otherwise drying out and starting off on the drier side tomorrow morning around the Golden Horseshoe. This I've stopped at 8:30. But then what happens, even though we have sunshine to begin, as we get towards the afternoon, lunch hour and into the afternoon hours, things fill back in with some cloud cover, and then some scattered showers will begin to develop as well. So I would again encourage you to have an umbrella with you through the day for Thursday, because not everyone will need it, but there'll be many areas where we're going to see some of those wet conditions developing. Overnight tonight, the lows look like this. Notice London quite a bit cooler. There's going to be some spots with some chillier temperatures really developing through the overnight hours. The winds tomorrow turning towards the west, at times a little gusty, but really compared to today, nothing like we saw today. So your temperatures, as some of those clouds coming back in, but you should stay drier back towards southwestern Ontario than what we're going to see elsewhere, like around the Golden Horseshoe. Tonight, Mark, I'm pointing out for you one of the areas where we'll see a slightly cooler temperature. Of course, elsewhere, we're talking about those lows being closer to 5 to 6 degrees for the overnight temperatures. Tomorrow afternoon, the readings on the thermometer, not as warm as today, but because the winds won't be as strong, it's probably actually going to feel similar. Enjoy the sunshine that we'll have early as those afternoon hours. We're going to see those clouds filling in. Friday, though, 18. Saturday, can you believe this? 24 degrees. Cold front goes through Saturday night into Sunday, so 14 degrees. And then into Monday, it does look like for the actual holiday Monday, Thanksgiving, we're likely going to see some showers coming back through with some wet conditions there. Kelda?
All right, at least we have Saturday. Thanks so much, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
I'm Ismail Alpha, host of Metro Morning. On tomorrow's program, how losing Honest Ed's and Mirvish Village to a luxury developer changed a neighborhood. Filmmaker Lulu Wei explores that in her documentary, There's No Place Like This Place, Any Place. And she'll join me to talk about it on Metro Morning. You should too. Weekdays from 5:30 till 8:30 on CBC Radio 1.
It was an incredible chase with a happy ending. It took quite the coordinated effort to find a runaway dog at Toronto Pearson Airport. The hours-long chase taking place on the tarmac last week. It all started when Crystal, a rescue pooch on a flight from Spain, got away. Preston Mulligan has more on her great escape and how it all ended.
Rhonda Martins of Lower Sackville imports these Spanish Podencos and finds them homes here in the Maritimes. She says they're used for hunting back in Spain and then usually abandoned. Last Monday, she flew from Spain to Toronto with 4 of them. But when the British Airways flight landed at Pearson, Crystal, the white Podenco, jumped out of the cargo hold and ran. What happened next was an hours-long high-tech search quarterbacked by officials high up in the control tower.
They did a phenomenal job. This was not their fault. And they spent 13 hours looking for her.
While crews on the ground drove for hours in the dark looking, air traffic control diverted flights away from the search area. Finally, an infrared camera locked in.
Once our security operations had a thermal image of her, they were able to direct myself and our wildlife team to the general area. And at that time, she was in a bit of a gully at the end of one of the runways in tall grass.
Finding her was one thing, but catching up to her, next to impossible.
Crystal, just with her breed, she is a very fast dog. So there were times where it just looked like a white blur running down the taxiway.
While the other 3 dogs got settled in the airport hotel, they had no idea what was going on with Crystal.
If something good could come from COVID, we're very blessed that there weren't very many planes flying because people aren't traveling. So that was another added bonus.
Eventually, after running for hours, Crystal was wiped out. By daylight Tuesday morning, she just crawled under a nearby truck and laid down. Airport staff crawled under with her and gained her trust.
You never start a shift thinking you're going to be chasing a dog down a runway. But overall, I'm glad it ended the way it did. There's nothing like being able to reunite an animal with its owner.
These dogs are pretty important to us, and I'm just glad she's okay.
The search party celebrated on the runway Tuesday morning and took a few photos. Today, Crystal is relaxing at her new home in Moncton. Preston Mulligan, CBC News, Halifax.
And that's it for our show tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.